Right, so today it's time to talk about one of the biggest issues that has plagued War Thunder in recent years. This is an issue that nobody has really spoken about. None of the people who were lobbying against Gaijin and review bombing them on Steam and saying War Thunder's terrible, people were focusing, as I said last time, on completely the wrong issues. This issue has never been solved. This issue is not present on the roadmap at all. It's got nothing to do with the research changes of tanks or planes or anything. This is something that happened years ago. And I remember it well because it was terrible then and it's terrible now. When Gaijin decided to remove stock APF-SDS for high tier tanks and instead forced them to play with HeatFS, that is when the experience just became painful. Because a lot of the time, you're fighting tanks which have completely spaded modifications. So they've got laser rangefinder, they've got the best round with 650 pen, DM53, whatever they're firing. Regardless, if you're playing HeatFS, and if they've got an ace crew, for example, and they've got all their crew vitality maxed out, it makes the damage even worse. HeatFS has terrible velocities. Because of this, you cannot possibly win breach battles unless the other person is distracted, they aren't looking at you, or they're just bad. Which a lot of the time, they're not bad if they're at top tier because they're experienced players. And to make this even worse, a lot of the good players at top tier play their vehicles with bushes all over them. How are you possibly supposed to aim for weak spots with HeatFS, in which you have to, because you can't pen anything except for like the breach and perhaps the lower plate if you're lucky, if they put bushes everywhere. And a lot of the time you can't even shoot the lower plate because we're playing on the massive maps that Gaijin have chosen to add, such as Red Desert, Arctic, Breslau. Well, I guess Breslau's not as bad because it's a city map, but generally just they're adding larger and larger maps in which it becomes even worse. Pradesh, for example, where it becomes just terrible to play HeatFS. Conditions have just been made even worse. Nobody has mentioned this at all. None of the CCs, pretty much, have even spoken about this recently, apart from maybe a few. Because a lot of the CCs, they don't play tank stock. They get vehicle test drives from Gaijin, they spend all the golden eagles they get from Gaijin spading the vehicle, so they can be like, oh, look at this! This gets DM63 when spaded with a 5-second ace crew and laser rangefinder! And when you play it stock, like in CM11 for example, you're playing 400 HeatFS against Leopard 2A4s covered in bushes, against T72M2 Modernas covered in bushes, on fields of Poland, on European province. What are you supposed to do? You have no laser rangefinder, they're shooting at you from 2 kilometers with mega rounds that have in excess of like 400mm of penetration. You can do nothing. And when they decided to... So they decompressed 6.7 to 7.7. Yes, but by doing that, they moved up all of those tanks to face the tanks that were not moved up. For example, T72 Terms. That wasn't moved up. And now, you have tanks at 9.0 that have no chance of killing it, just getting destroyed when you're playing stock HeatFS. For instance, if you're playing the Type 16P, even if you don't have HeatFS, even with M735 you can't do anything. You've got a better chance, but that's like a far later modification. It's like tier 3, tier 4, so you have to spend ages playing with a completely useless round. Shooting tracks, shooting optics, shooting the breach, but except it does nothing because it's covered in ERA and it just turns it yellow and then he just kills you. This is something that needs to be talked about, because this issue will continue as more and more modern equipment gets added to the game. When you have stuff, or when you have vehicles like the Leopard 2A7, the T14, the M1A2 SEP V3, when you have all of these extremely modern tanks with their advanced active protection systems and armor and everything being added to the game, and you're firing Heatfest. I mean, we've already got vehicles in the game which just are immune to Heatfest. Try firing a Heatfest shell at a Challenger 2 Black Knight from over a kilometre on fields of Poland. His APS will just completely stop it. You won't do anything. You can't even damage him. I mean, sure, if you can try and barrel him if you're lucky, but that doesn't kill him. You can't do anything. This is the fundamental problem with how Gaijin has decided to do this. What's the solution? Simple. Don't care about historical accuracy. Back when I had the T-72B3 researched right at the beginning, it had 3BM22 stock. I know that it's wrong for a 2016 vehicle to be firing a round from probably the 80s, I'm not too sure with the history of the round, but what's the problem? Because some people have decided, oh, you can't be having tanks firing those rounds, they never entered service with those rounds. It doesn't matter. Gameplay is more important than your addiction to historical accuracy. If you need any more evidence of this, go look at what they did to ATGMs recently. They are fundamentally useless. I tried playing the Type 89 recently. The autocannon is fine, but it's at 8.7 now. It has to face T-64Bs. You can't kill that with an autocannon from the front, and the side the ERA will just absorb it for the first 5 rounds. The ATGMs are completely useless on that vehicle. As soon as you launch it, it flies far down, basically into the ground, and if you're lucky that it doesn't, it spends 5 seconds determining whether it wants to go straight or not. It's terrible. You might as well use them at point blank range as unguided rockets. This fixation on historical accuracy, if not sort of put down, is going to be one of the things that will really lead the game into a bad place. I don't want that to happen. I've been playing this game for 8 years. I really enjoy it. I don't want to see this game go down this rabbit hole of, for example, Object 279. That vehicle right now is one of the most broken vehicles in the entire game. I played it for like a couple games and I got a nuke in one of them. Not even trying that hard, because it was a full down tier to 7.7 and those tanks could do nothing. They could do precisely nothing. What's a Vickers Mark 1? Not even that. What's a Centurion Mark 3 going to do to an Object 279? What they have failed to understand is that to appease those people who are saying, oh, historical matchmaking, you have to decompress everything. You have to give vehicles rounds that can fight each other to an adequate extent, instead of them getting shit on in full up tiers every single game against premiums. Because that's what's happening right now. You take any 9.3 in the game, stock, and try face Leopard 2A4 premiums every game. N1 KVT premiums every single game. People who have bought the T72 M2 Moderna facing those vehicles. You can't do anything. You literally can't do anything. And this is the main problem that Gaijin has to solve if they are to move forward in a good way. So yeah, have a good day and I'll catch you next time.